A guy rolls into a gas station on a machine that weighs more than a baby grand piano. Chrome everywhere, 800 pounds of touring muscle, and every head at the pumps turns to look. Then, while backing it off the pump island at a slight angle, gravity wins. The bike tips, goes down on its side, and he stands there, hands on his hips, completely unable to lift it back up alone. But the strange thing is this: some of the most experienced riders on the road are walking away from bikes like that on purpose, not because they got scared, because they got smart. And once you understand why, you might never look at a big bike the same way again. So let's talk about it, because there's a quiet movement happening in the motorcycle world right now, and it goes against everything we've been told for the last 40 years. For as long as most of us can remember, the rule was simple. The bigger the bike, the better the rider. More cubic centimeters meant more respect. A leader bike or a full-dress tourer was the trophy you earned after years in the saddle, the thing that said you'd made it. Walk into any bike night and you can feel it. The crowd gathers around the biggest, loudest, heaviest machine in the lot, and the little bikes get parked off to the side like they're embarrassing. That culture is powerful. It sells motorcycles, it fills magazine covers, and it lives rent-free in the head of every rider who's ever wanted to be taken seriously. But a lot of riders who have absolutely nothing left to prove are starting to ask a very inconvenient question. What if the big bike isn't actually serving you anymore? What if it's serving your ego instead? Therefore, to really understand the downsizing trend, you have to start with the thing nobody likes to talk about: the weight. Let's be honest about what these machines actually weigh. A fully loaded touring bike with a top case, saddlebags, and a full tank can creep right up toward 900 pounds. That's not a motorcycle anymore. That's a small piece of furniture with a throttle. And here's what the showroom floor never tells you. All that weight feels fantastic at 70 miles an hour on the open highway, planted and smooth and stable. The problem is that you do not spend your life at 70 miles an hour on a perfect highway. You spend it pulling out of a gravel driveway. You spend it doing a three-point turn on a narrow country lane. You spend it duck walking backward out of a parking spot that's on a slight incline, in the heat, in full gear, with your knees telling you about every year you've put on them. And in those moments, that beautiful 900 pounds turns into your enemy. But it gets more interesting than just the inconvenience, because that weight ties directly into the single most common way riders drop their bikes. Ask any experienced rider when they last dropped a motorcycle and watch their face. Because the dirty secret of riding is that the vast majority of dropped bikes don't go down in some dramatic high-speed moment. They go down at 0 miles an hour, in the garage, at a stoplight when a boot slips on an oily patch, in a parking lot when a U-turn gets just a little too tight and the bike leans past the point of no return. At walking pace, the engine size means nothing and the weight means everything. Once a heavy bike passes a certain lean angle, you are not catching it, you are just choosing how gently it lands. Now, a younger rider with strong legs and quick hands can muscle through a lot of those moments. They can dab a foot, snap the bike upright, save it with raw strength. But strength fades, and that's not an insult, that's just biology. Picking a fallen tourer up off the pavement is genuinely one of the hardest physical tasks in all of riding, and it's the kind of thing that ends with a tweaked back that haunts you for a month. So a lot of smart riders look at that math and decide they would rather not roll those dice every single time they go to the grocery store. Which brings us to the thing that ego really hates to admit. Age changes the equation, and it has nothing to do with skill. Here's the part that stings a little, so stay with me. The reflexes you had at 25 are not the reflexes you have at 60. Reaction time slows down with age. That's measurable, it's universal, and no amount of experience fully cancels it out. Now, experience is enormously valuable, and a wise old rider will read traffic and spot danger long before a cocky young one ever will. That part actually gets better with time. But the raw physical speed of yanking a brake lever or flicking a heavy bike away from a pothole at the last second, that part gets slower. And a big, heavy bike becomes a whole lot less forgiving when your reactions slow down. It takes more force to turn, more muscle to correct a mistake, and more room to haul down from speed once all that weight is moving. A lighter bike, on the other hand, responds the instant you think about it. It flicks side to side with a nudge. Hard braking feels calmer and more controlled, instead of like wrestling a runaway fridge. It forgives the late reaction that a heavyweight would punish. So as reflexes naturally soften, the lighter bike isn't the timid choice. It's the one that actually keeps the margins on your side. But honestly, weight and reflexes are only half the story. The other half is something even funnier, because it is about how little of that big bike you ever actually use. Think about your last 100 rides. Be real with yourself. How many of them involved you pinning the throttle on a liter bike and running it up toward its absolute limit? For the vast majority of riders, the honest answer is somewhere around never. We are out there cruising the back roads, rolling through town, carving a few favorite corners, and stopping for coffee. The kind of bike that can hit 180 miles per hour on a racetrack is spending its entire life operating at a tiny fraction of what it can do. You bought the whole orchestra and you only ever play a few notes. And a big engine running way below its potential is not thrilling. It is just kind of asleep. You are hauling around all that power, all that weight, all that complexity to access maybe a sliver of what the machine offers. That is a lot of bike babysitting for not a lot of payoff. Meanwhile, the rider on the smaller machine is using most of their bike's capability on every single ride, and that, as it turns out, is where the fun actually lives. Therefore, before we go any further, we have to clear up a myth, because this whole conversation falls apart if you still believe that smaller bikes are slow, gutless, and boring. And in 2025, that belief is just flat out wrong. We are living through a golden age of the middleweight motorcycle, and it is honestly a little bit incredible. The mid-displacement bikes coming out now, the ones in the 600 to 900 cubic centimeter range, can make the kind of power that the original superbikes of the early 90s were famous for. They are light, they are nimble, they are loaded with modern technology like traction control, ride modes, and quick shifters, and they sip fuel instead of guzzling it. The manufacturers finally figured out that there is a massive audience of riders who want a bike they can actually enjoy, not just survive. A modern middleweight will keep up with traffic anywhere, hold a highway speed all day, surprise a sports car off the line, and still let you flat-foot it at a stop and flick it around with an ease that a heavyweight never gives you. The compromise that used to come with going smaller barely exists anymore. You are not giving up performance, you are giving up dead weight and unused capability. Those are very different things. And that leads us straight into the idea that converts skeptics faster than anything else. The principle of the slow bike fast. Here's the magic that experienced riders eventually discover, usually by accident. A smaller, lighter bike that you can actually use most of is more fun at legal speeds than a giant bike you're constantly holding back. On a heavyweight, getting any real excitement means breaking laws, taking risks, and pushing speeds that put your license and your life on the line. On a lighter middleweight, you get that same grin-inducing thrill while still riding within the limits, because you're working the bike, rowing through the gears, leaning it over, feeling it dance underneath you. Riders call it riding a slow bike fast, and once you've felt it, The appeal of the muscle-bound monster starts to fade. The lighter bike rewards skill instead of bravery. It turns an ordinary Tuesday commute into something genuinely entertaining. And it does all of that without ever asking you to bet your safety on it. That's not a downgrade. That's the whole point of riding finally clicking into place. If you're enjoying this and it's making you rethink what's in your garage, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I dig into the stuff the motorcycle world doesn't always want to admit out loud, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Now let's get into the part that's deeply personal and that no spec sheet will ever show you. Your body. Motorcycles are designed around an imaginary average rider, and that rider is usually young, flexible, and pain-free. The rest of us live in the real world, where wrists get cranky, knees complain, lower backs file formal protests, and shoulders do not love being stretched over a long tank for an hour. A lot of big touring bikes and aggressive sport bikes put you in a posture that your 40-year-old self handled fine, and your 60-year-old self quietly resents. The reach to the bars, the bend in the knees, the weight on the wrists, it all adds up over a long day. Smaller and lighter bikes tend to offer a more relaxed, upright, neutral riding position, and the difference in how you feel when you climb off is night and day. No numb hands, no aching tailbone, no spending the first 10 minutes of every stop walking it off like you just got off a horse. When the bike fits your actual body instead of fighting it, you ride more often, you ride longer, and you finish the day wanting to go again instead of reaching for the heat pack. Comfort is not a luxury for the older rider, it is the thing that decides whether you keep riding at all. But there is an even sneakier benefit hiding behind all of this, and it might be the most important one. It is about what is going on in your head. Let's talk about the fear tax. This is the toll that a lot of riders pay without ever realizing they are paying it. When a bike intimidates you, even a little, even subconsciously, you stop enjoying it the way you used to. Maybe you do not take it out on a marginal weather day because the idea of wrestling all that weight feels like a chore. Maybe you avoid certain tight roads, certain parking situations, certain rides, because somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a quiet voice asking, what happens if it goes down? That voice is the fear tax, and it slowly eats away at the joy. The wild thing is that most riders do not even notice it until it is gone. Because the moment they switch to a bike they can confidently handle, flat foot at a stop, pick up off the ground if they ever have to, and flick around without a second thought, the dread evaporates. Riding becomes light again, spontaneous again. They find themselves saying yes to rides they would have quietly skipped before. That feeling, that easy confidence, is worth more than any horsepower figure ever printed in a brochure. And while we are being practical, let us follow the money for a second, because downsizing pays you back in ways that have nothing to do with feelings. A smaller, lighter bike is almost always cheaper to live with. Insurance on a screaming leader-class machine costs a small fortune, while a sensible middleweight is dramatically friendlier on the premium. Heavy, high-performance bikes tend to chew through tires, brakes, and chains faster and cost more to feed, though how hard and where you ride matters just as much as the weight. Fuel economy on a modern middleweight can be genuinely excellent, turning a tank of gas into real range. Even the routine maintenance tends to be simpler and more affordable. None of this is the reason most riders downsize, but it is a very pleasant bonus to discover that the smarter bike is also the one quietly putting money back in your pocket. So at this point, you might be nodding along and thinking it all makes sense. And yet a ton of riders still won't pull the trigger. Therefore, we have to name the real obstacle, and it isn't the bike, it's the other people in the parking lot. This is the social pressure, and it's the toughest knot to untie. There's an unspoken hierarchy in a lot of riding circles, and rolling up on a smaller bike can feel like showing up to the reunion in last year's clothes. People worry their buddies will rib them. They worry they'll look like they're slowing down, giving up, getting old. So they keep the machine that's secretly making them miserable purely to protect an image. And that, when you say it out loud, is a genuinely silly reason to ride something that doesn't fit your life anymore. Here's the truth that the most confident riders eventually land on. The people whose opinions actually matter will respect a rider who knows themselves well enough to choose the right tool for the job. And the people who'd mock you for it were never really riding for you in the first place. The strongest move in motorcycling isn't buying the biggest bike on the floor. It's being secure enough to ride exactly what makes you happy and not caring who notices. And if you want proof that this works, just listen to the riders who've actually done it. The pattern is almost comically consistent. Somebody finally trades the big tourer for a light middleweight, usually with a knot in their stomach, half expecting to regret it. And then a few weeks later, they're practically evangelical about it. They talk about riding more than they have in years. They talk about taking roads they used to avoid. They talk about how they forgot a motorcycle could feel this playful, this easy, this alive. A surprisingly common reaction is some version of, "I wish I'd done this sooner." Now, to be fair, downsizing isn't a one-way door for everybody. Plenty of riders keep a big bike in the garage too, and some who do a lot of two-up touring drift back to something larger. But most folks who make the jump are genuinely happy they did, and they don't look back with regret. Now let's be crystal clear about something, because this video is not an attack on big motorcycles. Those machines are incredible at what they were built for. If you're crossing 3 states, 2 up with a passenger and a month's worth of luggage, soaking up highway miles in total comfort with a stereo and heated grips, a Gold Wing or a big road glide is absolutely the right tool, and nothing in the middleweight world touches them for that job. The point was never that smaller is always better. The point is that the right bike is the one that matches the riding you actually do, not the riding you imagine you'll do someday. For a rider whose real life is back roads, commutes, and coffee runs, a 900-pound tourer is a lot of machine to own for a fantasy. So let's put a bow on the whole thing, because the reframe is everything here. Downsizing isn't about losing anything. That's the story the ego tells, and it's wrong. Downsizing is about shedding the dead weight, the unused power, the constant low-grade anxiety, and the bike that was built for a rider you used to be. What you get back in exchange is the part that made you fall in love with 2 wheels in the first place. The freedom, the playfulness, the grin inside the helmet, the feeling of a machine that responds to you like it's reading your mind, instead of one you're constantly managing and bracing against. The smartest riders out there have figured out that respect was never about engine size. It's about still being on the road, still loving it, still going out for one more ride when a lot of their old riding buddies have already hung it up for good. A lighter bike isn't the bike you settle for. It's the bike that keeps you riding for another 10, 15, 20 years. And when you look at it that way, for a lot of riders, downsizing turns out to be one of the smartest moves they ever make. So if there's a part of you that's been eyeing that big machine in the garage and feeling more dread than excitement lately, maybe that's not a sign you're done riding. Maybe it's a sign you're ready for the bike that finally fits the rider you are now. If this hit home, drop a comment and tell me what you ride and whether you've ever thought about going smaller. I read them all, and I want to hear your story. And if you want more honest talk about getting the most out of life on 2 wheels, you already know what to do. Subscribe, stick around, and I'll see you on the next one. Ride smart, ride happy, and keep the rubber side down.